Many people have seen ethanol in both the media and in gas stations. But what actually is ethanol? Ethanol is a colorless, volatile, flammable liquid C2H5OH that is the intoxicating agent in liquors and is also used as a solvent and in fuel. There are two processes by which ethanol is made, the dry milling process and the wet milling process. In wet milling, the grain is steeped in water and dilute sulfurous acid for 24 to 48 hours in order to separate the grain into its many component parts. But in dry milling, the entire grain is first ground into flour, known as meal, and processed without separating out the various component parts of the grain.
Ethanol can come from things that grow, but how do those crops get from the field to your fuel tank? It's a process that starts by grinding the feedstock into small particles. Now, add water, and you have a nice mash going. Add a special enzyme, and the starch breaks down into teensy-tiny little particles. Want to see the starch liquefy and reduce bacteria? Crank up the heat, and the starch breaks down even more. Cool the mash before adding a second enzyme. See this fermented mash? It contains about 10% ethanol. To extract that ethanol, crank up the heat again and watch the ethanol vaporize. Now, you want to purify the mix, so remove any remaining H2O. And what's left is ethanol, about 200 proof.
To every fuel source, there are benefits and disadvantages. Ethanol has many pros, such as the fact that it is a renewable fuel that comes from agricultural feedstocks, so it can be produced domestically. It can also improve agricultural economies by providing farmers with a stable market for certain crops, such as maize and sugar beets. It is also non-toxic and biodegradable, and made from crops that absorb carbon dioxide and give off oxygen, and it has potential to reduce greenhouse gas emission and help maintain the balance of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Lastly, it reduces the dependence on foreign powers for fossil fuels, such as oil. Some of the cons of ethanol are that it takes a lot of land and energy and water, and drives up the price of our food because of supply and demand. There also isn't as much corn for animals or humans. And a gallon of ethanol fuel will only drive a car 2/3 as far as a gallon of gasoline, because ethanol does not contain as much energy as gasoline.
After examining both the pros and cons of ethanol, a question posed is ethanol the best possible alternative fuel source?
We find that there are better fuel options available. Ethanol needs 26.1 pounds of corn just to make 1 gallon of ethanol, and the choice between food or fuel should not need to be made. We believe a better alternative fuel would be natural gas or propane.
Natural gas is clean and non-toxic. Its use will reduce CO2 emissions into the air. Both natural gas and propane are found abundantly in the United States, which would lessen our need for foreign fuel. According to the Energy Information Administration, the amount of natural gas we have can last us for over 90 years. Propane is also a clean gas that will reduce the amount of CO2 emissions from transportation. The use of both natural gas and propane will help the U.S. both environmentally and economically by reducing pollution and providing business in America.